Welcome everyone to I Need Living Conversations. I am your presenter, Julian Catari, and I'm presenting to you Blue Heron Woman, who's been with us 151 sessions in this program, in this channel. And this time we're doing the second session of The Secret Life of Water. It's been a beautiful journey of scientific and mystic discovery, the place where the OWL Dojos, where the science and the mystic meet. And we just discovered that it's just all knowledge and you can't divide those two things, right. Just like our ancient people did. They didn't divide knowledge. So we're bringing back that knowledge, and we welcome you to this session of channeling, of investigation, and of sharing the knowledge that has been investigated by OWL Dojos. Secret Life of Water, Session 2. Welcome.
So before we begin, let's applaud both you and I, Julian, for 100, what did you say, 150?
51 today.
151. So there's 52 weeks in a year. So we're pretty close to 3 years of dedicating ourselves to this space.
Mm-hmm.
So let's applaud ourselves, whether we have followers or not. We are guided. You are a king and I am a queen, because we don't need the outward validation of people liking us and following us. We're just doing this.
We're not doing it for the vanity.
We're not prostituting ourselves. You are the king. I am the queen.
And we are gifting. We're not selling. We're not expecting anything for ourselves from this. We're actually just gifting this knowledge to whoever wants to receive it.
Right. Creating a space for this knowledge.
And creating the opportunity for freedom and for plenitude for somebody else.
True freedom.
Very few people can actually imagine that it can just be gifted like that.
Well, and I think it's you brought it all the more home to me with my stories about my friend Jay, mm-hmm. JC. We'll leave him as incognito as that right now, who is a Mexican American, but right, he, as I told you, were shocked that he got picked up and arrested by the game warden.
Mm-hmm.
There is no freedom. When you and I talked about that, it just really brought home to me that there is absolutely no fucking freedom in America. There is no fucking freedom in America. There is no fucking freedom in America. How many times can I say that?
Right. And
not when the sheriffs, the police, and the game wardens are all conspiring to fucking arrest you for doing something that everybody does every day of your life.
Mm-hmm. You have to be very careful these days, but then this story proves that you are the only one capable of taking the freedom away from yourself.
Exactly.
Because if you are conscious of the state of being, I mean, and different states are different, and they all states, not just the United States, are states that take away your freedom in some way or another.
Well, and it's our acquiescence. So like I told Mr. JC here, I absolutely adore him because, some time ago he told me I'm on like my 9th DUI, Ingrid, so I'm a felon. Right? And so a few weeks ago we finally had the conversation of, Jaime, JC, how have you gotten past the blow thing in your truck? And he's like, I just refuse to submit.
Mm-hmm.
It's an expense I have to bear all by myself. Why would I do it? And it took me about a week before I finally told him, you're my fucking hero for saying no to that. That's bullshit. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That took a courage to say no, I'm not going to comply with your bullshit.
Mm-hmm. That's what
because we have to learn. I'm not a felon. I like to drink alcohol. Mm-hmm. I haven't killed anybody yet. And I don't think you will. I mean, because we don't look at the fact that there's a shit ton of people out there on narcotic painkiller prescriptions that are driving drunk and they never get accounted for.
Right. It's never fair, and it's never.
Right. It's all on alcohol.
It doesn't really work. I mean,
no, it doesn't. It's we're targeting a specific population anyway. So let's get off this soapbox. But let's just say there is no freedom in America when the game wardens can arrest you for an outstanding warrant. Freedom is all or nothing, and there is no freedom if a game warden can arrest you for an outstanding warrant. That's bullshit. Americans ought to be fucking pissed off about this. This is just bullshit. Anyway, so we finished last week with we are all downstream from someone else in the world's water cycle. So let's talk about watersheds. We can call them watersheds, we can call them catchments, we can call them drainages, we can call them basins or cuencas, but by any name they function the same. And everyone on the planet lives in a watershed. At all scales, watersheds are uniquely evolved in geomorphic, hydrological, and biological entities that provide all members of the community a benchmark for judging the wisdom of our past, present, and future land and water use practices. So, at its most basic level, a watershed encompasses all of the land surface that collects and drains water. Watersheds can be as large as the Mississippi Basin, which is the fourth largest in the world, which drains 41% of all the lower 48 U.S. states into the Gulf of Mexico. Or watersheds can be as small as our backyard. And that's what we need to consider. Even in our stupid postage stamped backyards, that's still a watershed. They'll think we're so freaking cool for our 3,000 square foot houses with a postage stamp backyard. That backyard is still a watershed. So we all hold the watersheds in our hand, and in turn we are held by the watersheds. Watersheds at all scales are evolved living entities that we can work with. The exciting art and science behind thinking like a watershed can nurture our hearts and spark our imaginations. It also instills a humility that allows us to perceive the Earth's watershed not as a human commodities, but as living commodities. Like all watersheds that begin in the headwaters of a river, so we must begin our restoration process in the most critical of all headwaters, the very water in our own heads, because we are all actually walking watersheds. Throughout the most of human history, water has been viewed as a gift of creation and an element that nurtures all of life. Many cultures and belief systems still regard water as sacred and have maintained a relationship to water that embodies both the spiritual and the material. So from a cultural perspective, water is linked to community, land, celebrations, ritual, food traditions, and all living things that depend upon it for its survival. Now we come to the concept of acequias, if that's how it's pronounced.
Acequias.
They're part of an ancient legacy of water civilizations. Their roots extend back thousands of years to the arid land peoples of present-day India and the Middle East and the Americas. Acequias?
Acequias.
Acequias. Okay. Were established within a worldview in which water was treated as a community resource. They made their way to the southwest of the U.S. by way of Mexico, Spain, and North Africa. The result was a highly localized and unique system of water management and a polyculture of diverse crops from Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. So the word acequia is of Arabic origin, and it means quencher of thirst or bearer of water. And interestingly enough, we're coming into the age of the acequia.
Acequia, not acequia.
Acequia. Acequia.
Acequia.
There we go. I'll get it right. Acequia. So, and a lot of your astrologist folks will tell you we're not in the age. We're in the transition between Pisces and Acequia. Right? And it's not traditional astrology will tell you it's AI technology because of it. They consider Aquarius an error element. No. Aquarius is all about the water. All about the water. So the acequia. So from a physical standpoint, and the acequia is defined as a system that diverts water from a common source like a river, stream, or spring and moves water by gravity flow through earthen canals, spreading the snow melt and runoff from upper watershed throughout the valleys of irrigable land via an intricate network of waterways. So this system of water distribution is made possible by communal labor and participation. The social dimension of the acequia is the community of families that rely on it for water and collectively manage, maintain, and govern the system. Acequias evolved as a communal system in which the right to use water from the acequia was tied to fulfilling certain responsibilities. For example, every spring, parcientes or irrigators from each acequia are required to provide peones, workers, for the annual saca, or cleaning or taking out of the acequia. Depending on the size, anywhere from 10 to 100 peones or workers meet at the designated location with their shovels and other tools at the crack of dawn to fulfill their responsibilities as a communal duty. So the fundamental principle underlying the acequia system of water management is equidad, or equity. Over time, acequia communities evolved unique customs of distributing water based on the fundamental principle that water is essential to life and that it must be shared for the common good. So for hundreds of years in New Mexico, for example, acequias have been self-governed. The parcientas who have water rights are able to elect one from among them to be the mayordomo or caretaker. The mayordomo is usually a person who has learned through generational teachings the way of water. One of the most important virtues of a mayordomo is to have the ability and patience to work with people and guide the use of water to uphold the principles of sharing and equity. In addition to the mayordomo, acequia parcientes elect a 3-member commission that is entrusted with enacting and implementing the governances of the acequia. Within this cultural context, water is communal. The right to use water is attributed to individual families, but is contingent upon the contribution of cooperative labor. A water right, or derecho, is conditioned by the limitations of nature. Lastly, water is inextricably linked to the land. According to the fundamental governances, a water right is not an individual property right that is transferable by severing it from the land. So each one of us has a role in shaping the creation story of the future, because each one of us has got to realize we are living in an illusion that we have created. And it's not an absolute reality by any stretch of the imagination. So each one of us is responsible for the sacred water pot, so to speak. So let's go to a man named Victor Schauberger, who was born in Austria of a long line of foresters. He developed the gift for accurate and intuitive observation so great that he was able to perceive the natural energies and other phenomena occurring in nature. He developed very profound and radical theories concerning water, the energies inherent in it, and its desired natural form of motion. These theories earned him the name of the water wizard. And his theories offered new insights into the naturally correct or naturalesque management of water. This encompasses its proper handling, storage, and conduction by means that promote its self-purification, the retention and enhancement of its natural energies and health. So, as a natural organism, and none of us, I doubt, consider water to be an organism. We just consider water to be water. It's an organism. It's formed and functions according to nature's law and geometry, the latter exhibiting none of the elements of the straight line, circle, or point, all of which are the basis of modern mechanical and technological artifacts. Victor Schauberger said, "It is possible to regulate water courses over any given distances without embankment works, to transport timber and other materials even when heavier than water down the center of such water courses, to raise the height of the water table in the surrounding countryside, and to endow the water with all those elements necessary for the prevailing vegetation. Furthermore, it's possible in this way to render timber and other such materials non-inflammatory and rot resistant." Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
If our timber were rendered non-inflammable, there would be no wildfires.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again. If our timber were rendered non-inflammatory, there would be no wildfires.
Mm-hmm.
And why is our timber inflammable? Because of our stupid human practices
Mm-hmm.
of greed. So it's possible in this way to render timber and other such materials non-inflammatory and rot resistant, and to produce drinking and spa water for men, beast, and soil of any desired composition and performance artificially. So he was saying we can produce this wonderful water artificially and in the way it occurs in nature. And it's possible to raise water in a vertical pipe without pumping devices to produce any amount of electricity and radiant energy almost without cost, to raise soil quality, heal cancer, and all diseases. He lived about the same time as Nikola Tesla did, and he received a huge grant from the U.S. and to do something, and it didn't happen, and he quit talking and died 2 weeks later.
And was murdered.
Yeah. So, Victor Schauberger viewed water as a living entity, the blood of Mother Earth, which is what all indigenous peoples do,
Mm-hmm.
which is born in the womb of the forest. Life is movement and is epitomized by water, which is in a constant state of motion and transformation, both externally and internally. Water is able to combine with more substances than any other molecule that we know of, and flowing as water, sap, or blood, it is the creator of the myriad life forms on this planet. So, as the fundamental basis of all life, water is a living entity and should be treated as such. Failure to do so quickly transforms water into an enemy, rather than the nurturer and furtherer of all life that it should be. So, according to Victor Schauberger, there are as many varieties of water as there are animals and plants. And he said where water is the merely sterile distillized H2O as claimed by science, it would be poisonous to all living beings. Because distilled water,
Mhm.
distilled H2O, is juvenile water, and it's so devoid of what we call impurities that it has no developed character and qualities. So, as a young, immature, growing entity, it grasps like a baby at everything within reach, and it absorbs the characteristics and properties of whatever it comes into contact with or has attracted itself to grow to maturity. So were we to drink this, quotes, pure water constantly, it would quickly leach all of our store of minerals and trace elements and kill us. And that makes sense, right? When you consider the journey of water. So only when water is mature, when suitably enriched with raw materials, is it in a position to give, to dispense, and that's true of ourselves too. This is one of the archetypes that I've been listening about today, is when we take care of ourselves, we're able to dispense. We don't just give and give till we die out, or we don't leach and leach and leach till we die out, right? So when water is mature, it's able to give, to dispense itself freely and willingly, enabling the rest of life to develop. The upholder of the cycles that supports the whole of life is water. In every drop of water dwells the holy mothers that we've talked about. And there also dwells life. The soul of the first substance is water, whose boundaries and banks are the capillaries that guide it and in which it circulates. It is the being that has life and death. And more energy is encapsulated in every drop of good spring water than an average sized power station is presently able to produce. So in accordance with Einstein's equation of E equals mc squared, in 1 cubic centimeter of water, 25 million kilowatt hours of energy are stored. So with incorrect handling, these 25 million kilowatts become diseased and impart this condition to all other organisms, causing their decay and death. And it's not instantaneous, it takes time. So chlorine eradicates all type of bacteria. More importantly, it also disinfects the blood, which is about 80% water or sap, and in doing so kills off or seriously weakens many of the immunity enhancing microorganisms resident in the body of those consuming it. So think about that. All of our city water is treated by chlorine.
Mm-hmm.
The gas used by Hitler to exterminate Jews.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Same thing. So the most crucial factor in affecting the health and energy of the water is temperature. As a liquid, the behavior of water differs from other fluids. Water becomes consistently and steadily denser with cooling. It reaches its densest state at a temperature of +4 Celsius, which would be 39.2 Fahrenheit. And below that temperature, it becomes less dense. But it is at its most potent at 4 degrees Celsius, or 39.2 Fahrenheit. So in contrast, water's behavior is anomalous because it reaches its greatest density at this temperature of +4. And this is the anomaly point, or the point of water's anomalous expansion, which is decisive in this regard and has major influence on its quality. This highest state of density is synonymous with its highest energy content, a factor to be taken carefully in account since its energy is our life force, because we are 70% water, 80%, 80 to 90% as infants, and 70 to 75% as adults. So conceived in the cooled cool, dark cradle of the forest, water ripens and matures as it slowly mounts from the depths. On its upward way, it gathers to itself trace elements and minerals. Only when it is ripe, and not before, will it emerge from the earth, the womb of the earth, as a spring. So, I know of a man who says we shouldn't be drilling wells, and now I understand what he says, because if we drill wells, we're bringing up immature water. So as a true spring, in contrast to a seepage spring, this has a water temperature of about 4 degrees Celsius or 39.2 Fahrenheit. So a seepage spring is a slow seep, but here in the cool, diffused light of the forest, it begins its long, life-giving cycle as a sparkling, lively, translucent stream, bubbling, gurgling, whirling, and gyrating as it wends its way towards the valley. Its natural self-cooling, spiraling, convoluting motion, water is able to maintain its vital inner energies, health, and purity. And in this way, it acts as the conveyor of all the necessary minerals and trace elements and other subtle energies to the surrounding environment. So naturally flowing water seeks to flow in darkness or in the diffused light of the forest, avoiding the direct light of the sun. Under these conditions, even when cascading down in torrents, a stream will only rarely overflow its banks. Due to its correct natural motion, the faster it flows, the greater its carrying capacity and scouring ability, and the more it deepens its bed. Because this is due to the formation of its in-winding longitudinal clockwise or anti-clockwise alternating spiral vortices down the central axis of the current. So we have, in the central axis of the current, we have longitudinal clockwise and anti-clockwise alternating spiral vortices, and these are important because they constantly cool and recool the water, maintaining it at a healthy temperature and leading it to a faster, more laminar spiral flow. So to protect itself from the harmful effects of excess heat, water shields itself with overhanging vegetation. Because with increasing heat and light, it begins to lose its vitality and health, its capacity to enliven the environment through which it passes. So ultimately, it becomes a broad river, and the water becomes more turbid, with the content of small grains, sediment, and silt increasing as it warms up, its flow becoming slower and more sluggish. However, this turbidity plays an important role because it protects the deeper water strata from the heating effects of the sun. Being in a denser state, the cooler bottom strata retain the power to shift sediment of larger grain size from the center of the water course. And in this way, the danger of flooding is reduced to a minimum. The spiral vertical motion, which led Victor to the formation of his theories concerning implosion, creates the conditions where water remains disease-free. So, and he knew all this. Victor lived just after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Another of water's life-giving properties is its high specific heat, which is lowest at 37.5 Celsius or 99.5 Fahrenheit. The term specific heat refers to the capacity and rapidity of a body to absorb or release heat. So think about it. As humans, our natural body temperature is 98.6. So we're absorbing and releasing heat constant.
Mm-hmm.
So with a relatively small input of heat, fluids with a high specific heat warm up less rapidly than those with lower specific heat. And how strange and remarkable that the lowest specific heat of this substance, water, is but 0.5 degrees CC above the normal blood temperature of humans. The property of water to resist rapid thermal change enables us, with blood composed of 80% water, to survive under large variations of temperature. So just as good water is the preserver of our proper bodily temperature, our anomaly point of greatest health and energy, so too does it preserve this planet as a habitat for a continuing existence. Water has the capacity to retain large amount of heat, so where there is no water vapor, we'd live in a very cold planet. Water in all its forms and qualities is the mediator of life and deserves the highest focus of our esteem. To be or not to be, in nature all life is a question of the minutest but extremely precisely graduated differences in particular thermal motion within every single body, which continually changes in rhythm with the processes of its pulsation. This unique law, which manifests itself throughout nature's vastness and unity, and expresses itself in every creature and organism, is the law of ceaseless cycles, that in every organism is linked to a certain time span and a particular tempo. In order to preserve this state of equilibrium, it is the vital characteristic inner temperature of each of the millions of microorganisms contained in the macroorganisms to be maintained. So the number one enemy of water is excess heat or overexposure to the sun's rays. It is a well-known fact that oxygen is present in all processes of organic growth and decay. So whether oxygen's energies are harnessed for either one or the other is dependent on the temperature of the water itself, or in the form of the blood or the sap. As long as the temperature is below 9 degrees Celsius or 48.2 Fahrenheit, its oxygen content remains passive. And under such conditions, the oxygen assists in the building up of beneficial high-grade microorganisms and other organic life. However, if the water temperature rises above this level, oxygen becomes very active and aggressive, promoting dis-ease conditions. And when water becomes overheated, due principally to the increasingly widespread clear-cutting of forest, the health-maintaining pattern of the longitudinal vortices changes into transverse. So in water flow, we have these vortices that are longitudinal, right? They're linear. Longitudinal is linear. If they change to become vertical, now they're going to produce disease. Or transverse. These not only undermine and gouge into the river works and embankment works, eventually bursting them, the transverse vortices, create potholes in the riverbed itself, bringing even greater disorder to an already chaotic channel profile. So water in these conditions loses its character and its soul. So all of our rivers worldwide have been deprived of their character and soul because we fucked with them. Humans have fucked with them. And like humans of low character, it becomes increasingly aggressive as it tries to restore itself to health and vitality and stability. So think about this. You know, we think people need to be put in jail because they're just bad. But if we look at itself, look at this concept, like humans of low character, water becomes increasingly aggressive as it tries to restore itself to health and vitality. Is that not what maybe humans are doing?
Mm-hmm.
Due to the senseless practice of clear-cutting forests, we are destroying the very foundation of life. And with the removal of the forests, two very serious things happen. Number one, during its flow to the seas, The water warms up prematurely to such an extent that is warmed right down to the channel bed. No cool, dense water strata remain, and the sediment is left lying on the bottom. This blocks the flow, dislocates the channel, and results in the inevitable and often catastrophic floods. And we ignorantly call them natural disasters because they're human caused. Also, due to the broadening of the channel, even more water is exposed to the sun's heat, resulting in over rapid evaporation to the atmosphere. And in many cases, this overloads the atmosphere with water vapor, which it is unable to retain, and so deluges water walls like we experience in Oklahoma follow.
Mm-hmm.
So number 2, with the forest cover now removed, and Oklahoma was a dust bowl of the 1920s because they deforested all the land, and we're still deforesting it.
It all comes down to the deforestation.
It does. So with the forest cover now removed, the ground also begins to heat up to temperatures much higher than normal and natural, and dry soil heats up as much as 5 times faster than water. This has a twofold effect. Number 1 is the rejection and repulsion by the warmer soil of the incident rainwater, whose temperature in this case is generally lower, and cold rain will not readily infiltrate warm soil. This results in rapid surface runoff and no groundwater recharge, and so the soil dries out. And you know what? We had a very wet July and almost very wet August, and we're in September, and we're in a fucking dust bowl.
Oh, wow.
There is no groundwater because of all this. It's crazy. So with the forest cover removed, right? Dry soil heats up, has twofold effects. Number 2 is an increase in dis-ease conditions. The upshot of all this is more flooding, reduced groundwater quantity, and lower groundwater tables. So one flood begets the next in rapid succession. The remaining trees, the vital retainers of water, die, leaving the land barren and desiccated with the necessary sequel of drought. Every economic death of a people is always preceded by the death of its forests. So the more engineers endeavor to channel water, of whose spirit and nature they are ignorant, by the shortest and straightest route to the sea, the more the flow of water weighs into the bends, and the longer its path and more diseased the water will become. So the spreading of cancer is a necessary consequence of such unnatural regulatory works. And they did studies back in the 1920s about this. And everywhere water was so highly regulated, cancer was outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
So the drying up of mountain springs, a change in the whole pattern of motion of the groundwater, and the disturbance in the blood circulation of our organism, Mother Earth, is the direct result of modern forestry production practices. The pulse beat of Pachamama has been arrested by the modern timber production industry. So as we become the mayordomos of water, we must treat it in the ways demonstrated to us by nature. First and foremost, water should be protected from direct sunlight and from excessive heat. Ideally, it should be placed in opaque, porous containers, which on the one hand cut out all direct light and heat, and on the other allow the water to breathe, which in common with all other living things, it must do to stay alive and be healthy. So we need to ensure that our storage vessels are insulated so that the contained water is maintained at the coolest temperature possible under the prevailing conditions. So the materials most suited to insulation are natural stone, wood barrels, and terracotta. Terracotta has been used for this purpose for millennia because it exhibits a porosity that is well suited to the purpose of water storage. This is because it enables a very small percentage of the contained water to evaporate via the vessel walls. And evaporation is associated with cooling, and vaporization is associated with heat. Another important factor is the shape of the container. The storage containers we have today have drawbacks in terms of impeding natural water circulation and water suffocation. Due to the rectangular shape and right-angled containers, stagnant zones are created, and since most of them are created from impervious materials, the contained water is unable to breathe and suffocates. So in this state, as a water corpse, it is no longer healthy or health-giving. So that has made me look at my rainwater storage and realize that it's diseased. I have this 250-gallon square tank, and I know it's diseased. What do I do with it? So what shapes are appropriate? Well, let's look to Mother Nature for that answer. Eggs and elongated egg shapes, such as grains and seeds, are there because nature in her infinite wisdom that produced these for optimal results. So, from our ancient civilizations who stored grains in terracotta egg-shaped containers, we have found grains of wheat that were still viable after 2,000 years. Egg shapes and their derivations have no stagnant zones and no right-angled containers that impede flow, or corners that impede flow. So by placing our terracotta vessels in shaded areas exposed to air movement, the evaporative cooling and effect will be enhanced. And since all natural movement of liquids and gases is triggered by differences in temperature, so too inside the egg-shaped storage container will cyclical spiral and vitalizing movement of water be induced. Movement is an expression of energy, and energy is synonymous with light. So the external evaporation causes cooling of the outer walls and the water in their immediate vicinity. Being cooler and denser, this water is now heavier and sinks down along the walls towards the bottom and forces the water there to rise up the center and move toward the outer walls. The continual repetition of this process results in the constant circulation and cooling of the water. Just the shape. Just the shape. And we think we're so much freaking smarter than nature. Just the shape. And you think about it, every freaking seed you look at is egg-shaped. Every freaking seed you look at is egg-shaped. So until we can create our own terracotta egg-shaped containers, all above-ground water tanks should be insulated on all sides and external surfaces with a thickness of 75 millimeters of insulation, and they should be white. The rainwater stored in tanks is immature because rainwater is immature. It has not interacted with the ground, has not gone down to the deepest levels. So it needs to be supplemented with minerals, and the dust of crushed basalt rock works well. So, at the Stuttgart University of Technology in 1952, Victor's theories were tested under strict scientific and laboratory conditions. And the test showed that when water is allowed to flow in naturally ordained manner, it actually generates certain energies, ultimately achieving a condition that could be termed negative friction. Checked and double-checked. The well-documented but largely unpublicized pioneering discovery vindicated Victor's theories of implosion. And it also overturned the scientifically sacred second law of thermodynamics that states, without continuous input of energy, all closed systems must degenerate into a condition of total chaos or entropy. So it negated, right? The experts at the Stuttgart University of Technology proved that this law applies only to machines and not to living organisms. So this second law of thermodynamics applies only to machines, not to living.
Wow.
Yes, that's pretty profound. So Um, Upholder of the cycles which sustain all life is water, and in every drop of water dwells a deity or holy mothers whom we all serve. So there also dwells life, the soul of the primal substance, water, whose boundaries and the banks are the capillaries that guide it and in which it circulates. Every pulse beat arising through the interaction of will and resistance is indicative of creative work and urges us to care for all vessels in which it throbs, the product of a dualistic power life. And that's where we'll stop for tonight.
Wow. That's some profound revelations. Nobody is really, I mean, we're so trained to not believe in, or to believe so strongly that the laws of thermodynamics apply to everything, and
So strongly trained to believe in science that declares everything to be a machine.
exactly, and that's just not the. And I've been talking about that with Maida, how just biology behaves in another way that is not mechanistic. That's the only way to truly understand it.
That's Victor Schauberger's constant theme was we only got to look to nature. And that's what Taoism, that's what Aloha, that's what Aini, that's what these three ancient systems that we're using, that we're working with for understanding the spirit side of ourselves. That's what they all say is you got to look to nature.
Wow. So is this water journey going to be continuing?
Yes, we're going to continue it next week.
Third session of Secret
Life of Water.
Okay. And is this going to be in the book?
Yes. Yeah, I put it on Trello.
So I mean I'm almost done with that. So I guess it's what's the other parts that are coming, like the ponds thing.
No, this was the last it. Like I told you, I got confused. I had looked at Trello and I thought I'd uploaded stuff, and I saw water 2, and I clicked on water 2, and it's like, no, that's not what. And it wasn't until just a couple of days ago that I was looking at my files on my external hard drive that I realized that I had the Secret Life of Water 2. So you've been working on water 3, but you're missing the Secret Life of Water 2.
Oh, so you're going to
upload? I just uploaded it the day before yesterday.
Okay.
Alrighty. So that is it. There's still more in Victor Schauberger's book, but it just got to be too much. It was just too much. So I was like, I'm going to call it there. At some point, maybe Holy Mother will call me back to this, but this was enough.
Okay. Yeah, it's very, very extensive, and
it is, because he developed, being a forester, he developed flues to float logs that astounded science. That astounded all the scientists. And I'm not sure. I mean, this book, I got it on Kindle, and it's a very big book. So where I stopped at was he was just really expounding about river management. He didn't even talk about that, but he had a bunch of patents that for like wood pipes with crystals in them, because we're going to get into that next week.
Oh, cool.
Right. So the water that we open our taps to is diseased and cancer causing because it's so disturbed. It's immature. It's overtreated.
Okay. Well, things we really need to know so that we can build a life with true health and true freedom.
Exactly. So we can return to natural harmonic ways of being.
And to study this further, you have to join Aloha Nidao Living, because we're not selling the books, we're not selling courses. We
Yep.
are just open to receiving and to this so necessary overcoming of the isolationism that the
I guess
system
kind
has.
of what we're selling
Okay.
is internships and apprenticeships in the dojos
Right.
to
Yeah,
become
but we're not.
permanent residents. So let's look at this in medical terminology, since I was a nurse.
Okay.
You come out of medical school, you're an intern, then you're a resident, and you're a fellow. So this is we're quote selling, which we're really not, interns and internships and residencies to become full fellows of the self-regulating communalism, aloha ani dao ranching, that will provide ample food, water, and shelter and comforts to all of humankind equally.
Mm-hmm. And so we leave that invitation for people, and we're sticking to the same time, right? 8:15.
8:15, yeah, for now.
Okay. So that would be all for this session, and
That's all.
wish you waterfalls of blessings, everyone, and see you next week.